Thank you, everybody, for joining. My name is Arthur Leopold. I'm CEO and co-founder here at Agentio, and we're so excited to finally have a deep conversation about measurement in the creator space. We're all here because we deeply believe in the power of creator marketing and understand that it's frankly one of the most important channels for every brand to be investing in. But historically, it's been really challenging to actually measure the space. And thanks to our partners at BlueAlpha and Klover, we were able to learn how to properly measure it. And the goal of this, of course, is for you to be able to go back to your CFO and your CMO and help them understand the power of creator marketing. Really excited for this, and I'll pass it over to Jonathan, my co-founder and CTO.
Really excited for the conversation today. We'll go over the agenda in a bit, but we know that beyond just the technology that we're building, measurement is where the technology meets the business need. And we're really excited to show you some of the ways that we've been pioneering with our partners at BlueAlpha and Klover of how to make creator marketing not just scalable and optimizable, but also measurable and actually cross the chasm into how we make the business case for continued expansion into creator as part of our media plan.
Hey all, Peter, I'm the CEO and the co-founder of BlueAlpha. Bit of background on myself, I am originally a data scientist and I experienced firsthand how difficult it actually is to prove to leadership that all of your paid marketing campaigns or ads are actually working. A bit of contradicting view because I was a data scientist at Tesla, when Tesla is usually not very much known for paid ads, in particular because Elon doesn't really like ads. But I was actually in charge of the marketing data science department where we built out the system that convinced probably the most critical leadership team that every single dollar that we deployed actually did work. In particular, also for more top of funnel, mid of funnel channels, which I'm very excited to dive a bit deeper in today in this conversation because we're going to talk about creator marketing. Over to John from Klover.
Then my name is John. I've been leading growth at Klover for the past 5 years. In that time, we 5x'd our spend. And I'm excited to announce that recently we were able to unlock creator marketing specifically because of this Agentio BlueAlpha partnership. So excited to dive into that.
Awesome. Here's what we'll cover today. First, really important for us to have a conversation around how to properly measure creator marketing. And if you can measure it, then of course the goal is to scale it. Creator marketing historically has been really challenging to scale. There's a significant amount of friction and opacity. And because of that, there hasn't been the proper infrastructure to enable brands like Klover to properly scale creator marketing. And then we'll actually dive into real world examples with John and Klover. Cool. Two numbers on this slide should fire everybody up that's on this webinar here today. Today, about 50% of attention is on creator content, meaning that when we're scrolling social, when we're on any digital platform, we are likely consuming some level of creator content. And over the course of the last dozen or so years, we started to build really strong parasocial relationships with creators. And creators are people that we trust. They're the best storytellers in the world. They're individuals who can effectively communicate not only their ideas, but a brand's ideas and a brand's message to their audience. And because of that, unsurprisingly, consumers trust creators more than brands by orders of magnitude, by about 70% more. And as marketers, the goal, of course, is to be able to tap into that trust and tap into that trust in a scalable way. The challenge historically, though, has been which channels are going to be the channels that deliver trust, that deliver authenticity, and that deliver a real connection between a brand and the audience that they're trying to reach. And today, we know through all the data that we have and that we all have access to, and frankly, through our own consumption, that creators are much more effective at building a relationship on behalf of a brand with an audience than branded content is. And if we go to the next slide, it's important for us to also understand the challenge in the space today and the paradigm shift that needs to be driven through greater infrastructure. Today, there's about $800 billion of spend on digital channels. That's on Meta, that's on Google, Trade Desk, Amazon. Yet creators only see about $12 billion of that directly. And there's an incremental about $20 billion running through creator media. And if you consider the previous slide, and the fact that 50% of attention is on creator content, and then you see that there's only between 11 and $30 billion of total ad spend running through creators, you start to realize that for the first time, there's a massive delta in dollars not being able to actually follow attention. And if you go back to 100 years ago when radio started, and then with TV, and then with print, the attention, wherever it was, the dollars always followed. And for the first time, you have this widening discrepancy where attention isn't actually being properly monetized. And that's the opportunity for every marketer, is to obviously be where the attention is. And that's what we want to solve today. And that's what we're solving for so many of the best brands in the country.
So maybe to talk about like what are one of the what are the two problems that make it actually so hard? And Arthur, you talked a lot about trust, right? And trust like resonates a lot in like building trust with a content or with a creator. But trust doesn't mean that you can actually measure it, because how do you measure trust? And in particular, if we look at why it's so hard to measure right now, is because every single method or methodology to actually like assign attribution doesn't work in the way how creator content works, right? You don't click on trust. And that's why some of the three like hardest points that, especially on the first problem, like it's hard to measure, is it's an upper and mid funnel channel, which obviously doesn't capture any click signals, right? And then there's a huge halo effect that actually goes completely uncredited, because you see something on Instagram, you see something on YouTube, you start Googling it, you start building trust into the brand, and then potentially you start purchasing. And then lastly, the first touch can lead to such a long delayed conversion, that sometimes the first touch point happens like 3 weeks or like even a month before you actually start purchasing any product. And how currently attribution works, and every method that is basically used in the market, just doesn't credit anything to that, to creator marketing, which can also explain why there's such a big $800 billion spent on digital ads, but only a fraction of that actually going to creator, because it's not detached to the actual like value and the credit that is actually being brought in through creator marketing. But then over to you on the second part.
In order to truly unlock scale, you need to be able to prove out the spend, and you need to be able to go to your CFO and say, the dollars that we're investing here is actually leading to strong ROI and ROAS. And one of the challenges, of course, has been like this inherent friction in trying to build a creative program and try to partner with the best storytellers in the world and those who can convert an audience really effectively. And even if you think back to the days of direct ad buying on the internet, before DoubleClick, before Google Ads, if you wanted to buy ads on the internet, you'd have to call somebody up, maybe at an agency. You'd have to dial up 10 different websites and try to buy the upper right-hand corner and buy that banner. And it's this archaic way of working that was possible for a few $billion to spend. But then, of course, Google purchased DoubleClick and programmatic ad buying happened. And that shifted hundreds of billions of dollars from the sidelines and from other channels to the internet. And now, thanks to AI and thanks to technology, not just around actually scaling creator partnerships, which we've built here at Agentio, but then properly measuring it, now we can shift hundreds of billions of dollars of paid media spend and paid digital ad spend to creators, because creators are the most effective storytellers. So we're really excited to not only unlock the scale challenge, but also the measurement challenge, because we know that measurement leads to investment. And we want everybody on this call to be able to leave today deeply understanding how we can properly measure this channel, because it is so effective and it's so necessary and critical for every business's growth to be investing in creators as storytellers and creators as content makers. When you execute a world-class creator program, you can have the most effective content machine possible. And why that's so important is because, especially as the algorithms change, and we saw it with Andromeda, creative diversity is more important than ever. And to be able to have a full funnel campaign and full funnel marketing strategy across paid and organic, you need so much more creative than you ever had the ability, frankly, to generate. And creators are the ones who can most effectively generate high quality creative.
And I think particularly also what you mentioned, the scaled ecosystems and the fragmented, like different individual creators that you had to bring together made it also almost impossible to like measure from the get-go, right? Because all of a sudden, if you have 200 or 100 different like data sources that you actually need to combine, what is the signal that you're getting? But on the next slide, we're going to dive a bit into how we're actually measuring creator marketing and what are the current methods that we actually have. So let's talk about like why measurement for creator marketing is actually broken, right? And in particularly, there's like tons of ways on how to actually like measure and approach the measurement. We have last touch attribution, discount codes, MTA, multi-touch, PPS, and then ultimately also like media mix models. From what we talked about a little bit earlier is what actually puts all of like last touch, MTA, discount codes, and PPS into one bucket are they're like by nature deterministic. And what we mean with deterministic approaches is there needs to be a certain action that we can actually like track. If we look into creator marketing, that action usually does not happen, right? Because you watch a video, you start to build trust, you actually see something you like, and then you go on your own journey in terms of like actually like your user buying journey and actually understanding, do I want to buy this purchase this product or not? So on the flip side of things, we actually now have media mix models. And media mix models are fundamentally different because they're using a probabilistic approach. These models are not new, like we're not reinventing the wheel here, but the probabilistic approach is actually like privacy independent. So we're actually not relying on someone to actually take an action, and we can start to include every single channel that we have into our like measurement system and actually level the playing field and get a read on what is working and what is not working. If we go to the next slide, we're actually going to double click a bit into why MMMs are actually the best way to measure creator marketing and that they still come with some limitations. Starting with some of the advantages, they're cookie-free and channel agnostic, right? We can include every single channel that runs in your marketing mix, whether there's offline, online, you run an out-of-home campaign, right? You run creator marketing as well as your paid search activities. Then on top of that, and we talked about this earlier, we can actually capture the delayed impact, which we call modeling out, for example, the saturation and carryover effect of what is the cumulative business impact over time that a particular channel is driving. On top of that, metrics like clicks, views, and impressions don't really matter because we actually look at the true incrementality, which is how many net new sales did we drive, right? How many net new conversions did we actually drive across all of our marketing campaigns? And there's no double counting because that is the source of truth, which also allows to help you leadership to answer the question of, hey, if we actually turn off this channel, what are we losing incrementally? And then lastly, this is actually like leveling the entire playing field because you now can compare each channel apples to apples and you get a whole holistic picture. To come back to one personal example of where we really felt the impact of having an versus like last touch was one of the first campaigns we launched at Tesla were a search and YouTube campaign. And our Google rep told us search is the most incremental channel and we should put all of our money into search, which wouldn't we have had any like MMMs or incrementality testing system deployed, we would have actually put all of our money into search, but we were able to show that YouTube alone was the most incremental driver and we pulled back every single dollar from search, which also makes sense in the case of Tesla because it has a huge brand awareness. But otherwise, this would have been not possible, right? Huge advantages of it, but the traditional ones still come with a lot of limitations. And the main limitation is like slow to provide findings. I think there's this stigma that MMMs update only like maybe once a quarter, right? But usually every single year. And you cannot really take any action out of it, right? And it becomes like the super high tactical player that sits in your corner. But if you actually want to go to the day-to-day or like week-to-week operations of how to plan budget, it's actually not really working. Then on top of that, you need to be able to feed data consistently into the model, which with if there's 20, 50, 100 different influencers that you need to work with individually, almost gets impossible to actually set up these data streams. And then if you don't measure everything, you'll be extremely inaccurate because you're actually missing channels, right? And then you undervalue it. And then historically, you also needed a whole data science team in order to actually run these models for you. So what are we actually bridging at BlueAlpha and in particular with Agentio in order to overcome some of those limitations and actually make it truly actionable? So on the next slide, we're particularly talking about this. So the first thing we talked about is data ingestion. And next to having a direct integration with Agentio, where we can actually feed creator level data directly into our systems, we have built out 500 other connectors, which actually allow us to update every single week the marketing mix model, which allows now marketing teams to get on-demand optimization of actually not having to wait three months or a whole year to get a read, but actually start using this marketing mix model as a player of like actually to make decisions, right? Then second, the capturing the halo effect. In particular with Agentio, we've built out customized decay curves that actually account for how creators' content is impacting and compounds over time across all channels. So this allows you now to not just understand, okay, creator marketing is driving X amount of value, but if I launch a campaign to now, I actually can wait 3 weeks and I'll see the full result. And then if we start to actually cut it off, it will temper off for another 3 or 4 weeks until it's actually completely depleted, which opens up new ways of actually doing your budget optimization and so on. And then lastly, which is like probably by far one of the most important things, is the incremental outcome focus of now actually being able to go to leadership and answering in their mind very simple questions of what will happen if we lose, or what will we lose if we now turn off creator spend, right? Of having this tool set in your pocket of saying, this is how many net new conversions it's driving. If we turn it off, we actually expect to see the full loss in 3 weeks, right? And if we want to scale, we'll need 4 weeks in order to measure the true impact. And by the way, we can tie this perfectly to metrics that also finance understands and wants to see. And we're not in this limbo of, but yeah, we drove X amount of impressions. So with BlueAlpha and Agentio together, we're actually creating or leveling out the playing field, and you now can see your creator marketing channel or your Agentio channel as the same channel as paid social and search, and actually giving us a true cross-channel ROI view. Arthur, Jonathan, anything to add?
Let's jump into actually scaling creator marketing. Awesome. So this slide might look and feel familiar to so many people on the call today, and I'm sure a lot of us also feel this pain. I was on with one of our partners recently, and they said, I remember when influencer marketing felt like hostage negotiation. And that was a bit of a holy shit reminder for us. And to think back to this very archaic, very manual process that historically has just taken a lot of time, a lot of bandwidth, a lot of team members, and the lack of data has made it really hard to actually scale and properly measure. And if you think about the entire process and how many opportunities there are for there to be like a lack of data transparency, for there to be introduction of bias, for there to be so many instances that could actually lead to the wrong outcomes, then it makes, of course, creative marketing much more challenging to scale. Jonathan, over to you.
As we think about the scaling process has typically been handled historically pre-AI by adding more people to the problem. And as we've been able to work so closely with so many of our partners over the past couple of years, this work needs to get done. And this is the process of finding people and the sort of timeline that we just looked at in the previous slide. And because of that, if you wanted to scale, you needed to hire more people, you needed to train those people, needed to be consistently applying the same brand alignment frameworks to the process of finding, negotiating, delivering with creators. It's just an incredibly challenging and painful process. And that has kept so many brands on the sideline. As we look at what's possible now, as you're able to unlock scale, you can unlock new actual budget pools of being able to get paid media into these campaigns. And if we go to the next slide, we can actually see how we're doing this. And at these sort of distinct chunks of work of creator matching at the beginning, automated contracting on Agentio, reviewing content, and finally reporting to close the loop. Just to give you a scale of how this works on Agentio, just in the last 30 days, Agentio has processed hundreds of billions of tokens, doing work in the background on behalf of all of our brand partners to make sure that each of these sections is done to the absolute best quality and as scalable as the budgets that our partners want to spend. And if you think about translating that number of tokens into human work, this is like quite literally thousands of years of continuous work. And hopefully that gives you intuition of why this was such a hard problem to scale in the past and why we're in such a different paradigm now. And a completely new opportunity is opened up for marketers to be able to work at a higher level of abstraction, having agents processing all of this information in a personalized, constantly aligning way with how they want to run their program, and being able to actually see results and get out of the weeds of doing this work that historically was only possible to execute with large teams of people.
All right. So excited to get into our experience using both Agentio and BlueAlpha. Basically, I'm going to paint a picture that a lot of the marketers on this call have probably seen. We were reaching the extremes of what we could profitably spend on lots of the paid social channels, so mainly spending on Facebook and Google for our app, which is an earned wage access app. So basically, it allows people to advance money from an upcoming paycheck. And as we're looking for other channels to scale into, social kept coming up as a consideration. But the issue was, as many, that it's just so difficult to tell, especially with some of the minimum requirements for some of these influencers, how beneficial the campaign will be before you actually spend the money. So there's the question of which creators to choose, how big of a test should you do? Should you go with someone small who then maybe you'll struggle to see the incrementality based on just pure uplift? Or should you go larger, but then risk a huge amount of money? And then that's a difficult conversation to have with the finance team. So when we discovered Agentio, which also helped with the actual buying, we were excited, but then we still needed the measurement piece. So the combined picture, now working with Agentio and BlueAlpha, is very different from the kind of early case scenario that I laid out. So basically what we did is we started a test campaign with Agentio. I think we started around like, I want to say 150,000 in spend per month for the beginning months. And that both allowed us to test a variety of creators and then also to have BlueAlpha measure the incrementality of those creators. So what we found is that within just 3 weeks, we were able to actually properly measure incrementality from our Agentio spend. We found that you can see the results here, but I'll go over them just because they're so compelling. ROAS basically was much higher on the Agentio channels than we were seeing on Facebook. The incrementality was proven. Blue ocean in terms of being able to scale spend. We were spending nothing on influencers before, so this allowed us to 2x our quarterly spend. And then the big component too is as we were scaling spend, we didn't have to add anyone to the team to manage creators. I was able to single-handedly manage all of the creators that we were working with on a monthly basis. Every single month, we probably work with about 100 plus creators. And should I have wanted to do this even before Agentio, it just wouldn't have been possible without hiring someone. Again, most people on this call know the challenges associated, but even just going back and forth with a single influencer's manager can take weeks to get a straight answer, and then they'll give you an insane early bid for how much the video will cost, and you have to work them down. It's just a nightmarish process. So having the single unified place to actually manage the relationships and then the data side to actually know that we're spending wisely, because also these results change too. So that's the valuable part about having an incrementality partner that can actually inform your decisions on a weekly basis. There's plenty of people who will take your money and do a geolift study a single time, and then that's just a snapshot of your performance at that one moment. So you really need this dynamic flow of data, constant updating of the model, just to ensure that you have the confidence. Because again, the results you're seeing at 150 in spend are different than 600,000 in spend. There's diminishing returns. There could even be differences in the creator makeup. So there's a lot of complexity that the simplicity of the setup it doesn't immediately make clear how much is running beneath the hood. But yeah, we've been very pleased with the results. Super excited to continue scaling on Agentio, and this partnership I think is just perfect. I'm excited to see where it goes in the future.
And John, once we started to like work together on like week by week, basically understand like how incremental is actually Agentio, I think we're like they're in your top 5 most incremental channels, like of the get-go, which is also incredible actually to see of having the data and then the weekly income, but then also seeing the results and having the confidence to actually say, okay, this is working, and now we're scaling further.
The speed of scaling too. So like just the ability to have the results and then on a weekly basis be able to increase spend by 30% and then actually get those contractors, or not those contractors, those creators spun up relatively quickly through Agentio just allows us to move a lot faster than some of our competitors. So we went from having no influencer promotion presence to now I'd say probably being earned wage access is a pretty big space, but in terms of spend on creators, I say we're probably top 3 at this point. And again, coming from no previous experience, super lean team. I lead all of growth. I have an agency. I have the guy that handles data and then a few graphic designers. So this is really like I was stunned when I saw these results, to be quite honest.
That's great, John. And I think this sort of outcomes, if we go to the next slide, all this is possible because of the way Klover thinks of the program here, which is a flywheel. And I think this is so important for any brand that's trying to replicate the success that you've seen, is thinking about the program not in a sort of linear timeline of how do I just execute, how do I just fill my budget, but as a flywheel that if you're executing it correctly, you actually should see your program accelerate both in scale and efficiency at the same time. Those two things typically work in sort of opposition in the advertising space. But as we think about what this flywheel actually means from a execution and measurement perspective, as we're launching creators and making that process more seamless and scalable, we've also built out enterprise grade data infrastructure to make sure all the data that you need to properly measure is flowing into the places where you need to actually combine it with the rest of your business data and have that work every single day reliably. And as you're able to have that data flow, prove incrementality at the pace at which you've been able to do it in the past, that gives you the confidence to then reinvest and then launch the next most optimal set of creators. And you can see how this flywheel accelerates over time. As you're spending more, you're gaining more data, more conviction, more opportunities that maybe weren't obvious when you're spending at lower levels. And this flywheel is the thing that enables the sort of increased spend and scale that you're seeing with maintaining or even improving efficiency over time.
Great. We can do some Q&A now. And Arthur, Jonathan, John, Peter, I'm monitoring the chat here and I will pass on to you the questions. We have 2 already. And for all the people that are still on, feel free to use the Q&A button to submit your questions. The first one is, what's the biggest mistake that you see brands making when they launch their influencer creator program for the first time? And Jonathan and Arthur, this is probably for you.
Happy to take that. Brands often view creative marketing not as a channel, but they view it as an approach to trying to build some level of awareness. And if you think back to how influencer marketing came to be over the last 10 years, typically there was a lot of one-off deal making. You would partner with a handful of creators, a handful of influencers, and hope that there would be some level of awareness lift or some increase in consideration. Now we have this entirely new paradigm shift where you actually have the infrastructure that can enable truly scalable and measurable influencer marketing. But in order for that infrastructure to work, you have to give control to the machine. And what I mean by that is, if you were today trying to buy ads on Google, you would not tell Google where to place those ads. You know that Google has trillions of data points that it uses to optimize the spend. And more often than not, we see brands who are exceedingly successful in Agentio, they trust the recommendations, they trust the improvements to the briefs, and they know that because of these billions of data points that are flowing through Agentio now from thousands of campaigns across top brands and all the leading creators, that the machine can make incredibly effective decisions on behalf of marketers and their teams and can really drive to the outcomes that a marketer or team is looking for. So number one would be like, be comfortable with giving up a level of control. And Jonathan alluded to this, but number two is ensuring that you have enough spend to actually see incrementality and to see a stat sig amount of signal. So if your marketing budget, say, is $100 million, or we'll use $100 million, like if you're only investing $50,000 or $100,000 or even $1 million in creative marketing, the likelihood of you being able to see enough signal and for this to become a strong enough part of your overall marketing mix is unlikely. It's akin to spending $50 on Facebook ads and hoping that you get enough learnings and outcomes. So number one, trust the machine, trust the data. This is a unbelievably exciting time to not only be building, but to be growing our companies through creators and through the infrastructure that's being built. And number two, ensure that you have enough spend to see signal and to drive towards the outcomes that your brand and your company is looking to achieve.
Just wanted to chime in on something there too. One thing that may be helpful for others is what we use. BlueAlpha as a tool that actually allows you to see with a minimum amount of spend what is required to actually get measurable results. So this is something that we personally used. Basically, we had a challenge for a new app that we were running. We manage multiple apps. So one is Klover, the other is a shopping rewards app called Merrifield. And our question when launching Merrifield on Agentio was, would we be able to see incremental, would we be able to measure incrementality with the minimum spends that Agentio required? So then using the BlueAlpha tool, we actually first had them ingest our data. Then they were able to say, all right, if you get X amount of impressions, that will be measurable within our system. So then we were confident that we would be able to get those amount of impressions with Agentio. So then we could move forward with Agentio and finally track our results. So that's something that just for us personally, that lots of times is the biggest filter when starting out. What is the minimum amount of impressions I need in order to even assess an influencer program? So that tool has now become pivotal in our approach to measurement.
John just answered, I think, 2 of the 3 questions in the chat.
Exactly. I'm gonna close.
I can't even see the questions in the chat too.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, there was a question on what's the minimal brand investment in creator in order to be statistically relevant for us. So I'm going to close this one. Great. There's another question. I think, Peter, this might be for you. On average, how much does last touch attribution undervalue creator marketing?
So I'm a statistician by heart, so I'm a bit careful with throwing out numbers because that's a very broad question, right? But I would say on average 2 to 3x on the ROI, because this is coming out of the sample that we see with our clients. They're currently using more creator marketing and so on. So that's the number that I would be comfortable sharing with. But it depends case by case in which sector are you operating, right?
You also see a big spike in views that happen after the initial posting. So this is something where we'll monitor not only the initial results after we post something in Agentio and get that measured with BlueAlpha, but we'll also look at the trends over the following weeks. Because in your Agentio dashboard, I'm not sure how many people here are already using Agentio or considering using it, you can actually see your lifetime views and also your daily spikes. So that's something that we'll also measure. And lots of times we look at on a case-by-case basis. So if we're during a time period where we wouldn't have normally expected a spike in traffic, all other platforms are the same, seasonal components are fixed, that's when we may go into the reporting dashboard and say, oh, we actually saw this video from a smaller creator went viral, and that's what's driving some of the increase that we're seeing in our conversion dashboard.
Great. Then there's a question, what's the name of the tool that says the minimal investment? It's BlueAlpha, it's the company. Great. Then we have, can the measure individual creator performance or only creator marketing as a whole channel?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in order for an MMM to work, we need some level of consistent spend over time. So there is some kind of aggregation, and you will never be able to go down to the creator level. But what we do is that we actually provide additional tooling where you have this first strong signal to actually break it down to the creator level as well.
Great. Then how does the data integration process work to enable for creator campaigns?
For between us and Agentio, we have an API integration, right?
So it's super fast, super easy, automatic. There's nothing.
It's automatic, exactly. For onboarding, John, I don't think you had anything to do with the onboarding between us two, right?
Yeah, we have someone on our team who handles like our marketing analytics, but even the extent of what he did was he just connected our apps flyer account with BlueAlpha and that was it.
We've been consistently, since starting the company 2.5 years ago, we've been consistently asked by the best advertisers in the country, Uber, DoorDash, Olipop, Skims, Viore, like these incredible brands to help them properly measure creative marketing because they know it's impactful. And to the earlier question around what's a typical incrementality, oftentimes across some of our clients, we'll see anywhere between like 2x to 5x. And the only way they can get there, though, is if they're able to actually access the data and feed the data into there like BlueAlpha and do so on a really consistent basis. And that's something that we've invested a lot of time and resources. We have an amazing product and engineering team. The team has been able to build this to make it so easy for brands to finally be able to plug in and properly measure creator.
Please don't vibe code that. That's not going to be a good time. Let Agentio handle your data pipelines for you.
But I also think that's like a classic difficulty for people who aren't using a tool like Agentio and they're just going and trying to do individual creator deals where that does become quite difficult to actually integrate it into the end for all the reasons that we've been talking about here, where you don't have that consistent data feed and you can't measure the halo effect or diminishing returns over time. It just gets really difficult really quickly if you don't have something like Agentio to aggregate it for you.
Yeah, imagine views, impressions at a daily level. That is actually what the app needs. Great, then we have another one, which is if you don't have an MMM in place yet, what metrics should you be focusing on in the meantime?
I think we can double team on that. From a measurement perspective, recommendation is to look at your first party data of understanding what is the KPI that you actually want to drive and try to do EDA or like just simple Excel sheets in a sort of, hey, I'm turning on a new channel. Is this actually moving up or down? And that usually works very well if you have not that many channels and the channel mix is not as complicated. Would be our recommendations. And of course, monitor what the individual platforms are telling you in terms of is this efficient spend that you're actually allocating.
Anything else to add, or we can move to the next question? What types of creators performed better for Klover, and how did you identify them, John?
I'd say we followed the guidance that Arthur was mentioning before, where really for us and our spend could accommodate it. So for some people with more limited spend, it's going to be a different approach. But I would recommend as much as possible to start with a very broad bucket because you'd be surprised with the way creators are able to promote content on their own page. They're a lot more flexible than what you would see with what your options are on paid social channels. So what do I mean by this? A user who's making content that's about, let's say, leather craftsmanship, which that was actually one of the niches that we had a video go live in, or car mechanics. These are channels that you wouldn't associate with people that were giving you advice on how to maybe manage your finances or avoid payday loans through using an earned wage access product like ours. But because they're so creative, they were actually able to say, hey, maybe you need to get a cash advance to get work boots for your first day at work before you start earning your paycheck. And that was something that resonated with their audiences. And had I been following an approach where we're just looking at what niches have historically worked with us, that type of learning wouldn't have surfaced. So I'd recommend going as broad as possible to begin with, and then you'll naturally see the data that comes through. So you'll see which videos generate the most clicks, which ones get the most views or engagement. And then from there, you can work down to what your highest performers are and then try to focus your spend a bit more around the highest performers. But I would always recommend the same way as with paid social ads, some sort of prospecting campaign where you're constantly looking out for new niches to expand into.
Yeah, John, I think that's spot on. And again, really critical for everybody to consider as they're kicking off a program or even as they're building their creator program. There's so much inherent bias in creator marketing because everybody has their own For You page and everybody believes that a certain creator might be really performant for a brand. And oftentimes, influencer creator marketers and brand marketers are right. But oftentimes more often than not, they just don't have access to all the data that can help them make better decisions. And great example of that frankly I love to share is there's a really popular green supplements brand and they historically had worked with a lot of health and wellness creators. They came to Agentio, and the Agentio platform, through the semantic understanding of creators based on all the content they've ever created, based on all the ad performance, based on the first party demo data, actually identified a lobster fisherman in Maine named Jacob Knowles. And if you haven't seen Jacob's channel, it's phenomenal. But Jacob's on a boat for 12 hours a day, and he talks about getting sick a lot. He talks about being like really run down. And for him to now integrate this green gummy company into his content enabled his audience to understand the resonance and the contextual alignment between his content and the brand. And he ended up being a top performer for a year and a half. And what's so exciting about that is from there, we can very quickly spin up additional campaigns for creators that are similar, that the brand maybe historically wouldn't have immediately identified. So maybe it's the crab fishermen in Alaska, or farmers in Iowa, or ranchers in Montana. And all of a sudden you have this entirely new audience that the brand historically wasn't exploring and then exploiting, that's performing exceedingly well. And we see that happen time and time again. Everybody is like constantly surprised by like the non-obvious creators. But in order to get comfortable around that, you have to, again, give up a level of control and let the platform go through these billions of data points to enable you to get the best creators into a campaign, and then continue to build off this base as you test more and you test more and you test more. And the Klover team has done an exceptional job of that, and it shows in the results.
Great. We also have a very interesting question. How is paid boosting or creators' content integrated into your final strategy? I assume for John. What criteria do you use to select content for amplification, and how do you measure its impact on performance?
So what we do is anytime we see a video that is generating a lot of views, especially in comparison to how much money that we spend on it, then we consider it running as a standalone ad and we get the license for it. So this is something you can easily do in Agentio. Basically, any video that you like how it's performing, you can negotiate for a license to run it as a paid social ad or on any platform. We also run some of these on connected TV. And then you get sent the actual video file with a renewing license. So it renews on a monthly basis. So basically, I personally screen, I know what works on different channels. It's not the same on every channel. So I look through the videos myself, and this is where it's more of me gauging what's going to work well on a certain social platform, combined with how well the video actually did, or how well that segment specifically did, because you can look at the segment level retention on the video or on the ad itself. And then using those two pieces of information, I basically pick a batch of ads every single month, and then I test them as ads on social. Once they're on social, then it's obviously just normal, whatever your criteria is for a performance ad you would follow.
Yeah, you guys have absolutely nailed that. And we often see brands who, we'll take YouTube as an example, they'll use their TV spots or their CTV spots and use that creative for their YouTube ads, and they don't see performance that's as strong as they would expect from the channel. And the reason for that, of course, is you come to YouTube and you expect content that is native to YouTube. And if you're seeing that fancy Super Bowl spot or Chevy truck spot in a commercial, it's not going to resonate nearly as well as a creator that you know or that you recognize, that you admire, actually speaking on behalf of a brand. And we strongly believe, and as I'm sure most marketers do, that you need to have a full funnel strategy, a mix of paid and organic, to be able to then leverage these creators as your content engine to get the creative that's working so well already in organic, and then leverage that for paid is a strategy that we see working time and time again. And of course, paid amplification enables you to more effectively measure the overall program.
Great. Then, Jonathan, I think this is for you. How do you handle brand safety under creators? What categories do you check?
It's a great question. I think this is one of the most important levers for enabling brands to scale confidently. And if we think about how we might have approached this problem in a pre-AI or pre-LLM era, this would be thinking of brand safety as like a massive checklist, right? Trying to break down what brand safety means to me in terms of checking a box. Yes, this is something that is really important to me, or no, this one isn't. But what we found is that always creates gaps. And it isn't actually something that's scalable with your program, and especially at the scale that many advertisers on Agentio want to run on. And so how we approach brand safety is having a prescriptive floor, right? There is these sort of shared approach of what the vast majority of advertisers believe is not brand safe. As a closed platform, those creators are, of course, not on Agentio. But the most important piece of how we align our brand safety system with an individual advertiser is through all the data that we collect and the feedback that we collect from advertisers as they're taking actions on the platform. And so this is what our system is doing. It's aligning with you over time and working with you as you figure out and uncover what brand safety means to you, because you're going to learn a lot as you execute campaigns, as you see new creators, as you discover all of these new potential creators to partner with that maybe weren't obvious in the beginning. And as you're expanding the aperture of your program, this is a consistent alignment process. This is a new way of thinking about it. And what that means is that you're building equity in your creator program on Agentio. Every single action that you take is helping inform the next set of creators. And over time, this is also how you build trust with the system. I know that's not a very specific, brand specific answer, but hopefully it gives you an understanding of how we think about this problem broadly and what it really means to fully solve it in this new era of building an AI native product.
And to further contextualize it, we recently had an RFP from a large international brand who was looking to partner with 1,000 creators and wanted a 10-year look back on all the creators' content. And the reason for that is because they needed a high level of confidence that they could then partner with these creators. And they ran it through Agentio, and of course, we were able to identify any issues instantaneously. And then they shared with us that they had partnered with an agency to also understand like how much time it would take to run through. We're talking like tens and hundreds of thousands of pieces of content, and the total billable hours would have been equivalent to 113 years. So either that's 113 full-time employees scraping content, reading old tweets, watching videos, 113 people spending the entire year doing that, or of course, a platform that can do it thanks to today's technology and what we've built almost instantaneously. And that is such a paradigm shift from the old ways of working, and that hopefully helps everybody understand what true scale looks like in this day and age. And once you can properly measure it, then of course you can unlock so much more budget and have so much more confidence in you being able to actually show up where the attention is and build trust with your consumers the way that your consumers expect trust to be built today, which of course is through creators, and to do so in a scalable way.
Great. We have another question for Agentio. How does Agentio's AI matching algorithm get smarter over time? What signals does it learn from?
That's a great question. I think I touched on it a bit, but it's I guess two parts of it. Smarter to me is a question of reflecting the things that are important to a brand, right? Something that is intelligent is actually understanding what you want over time and helping you and partnering with you to actually develop what that means. And so we had a slide before about the data flywheel that we have, but broadly, this is able to learn from what's working in your campaigns as you're testing and looking at all the data that we have, both on platform and from measurement partners like BlueAlpha, of course, being able to see what is working to inform which creators should we be doubling down on, which creators should we maybe not be doubling down on, and then having both sets of those creators actually inform what we should be testing into. So it is really this test and learn paradigm that's been so successful across other channels historically that we've been able to bring to the creator space because we've taken care of all the administrative lift that takes to actually execute these campaigns. And now you can be focused on getting into a test and learn mode where we're able to successfully deliver campaigns, learn from them, and use that to inform the next set of creators that could possibly deliver outcomes for you. This is a big part of it. So it's both like alignment with the brand on the things that are important to them and the goals that they're trying to achieve and reflecting that back to you in the creators that are matched and surfaced in your campaigns, and also using all this historical performance data that you're accruing on the platform to understand where those area investments should be directed. So it's twofold. And yeah, importantly, it's leveraging this vast data set of both creator content, the things they care about, and the things that are important to your brand, and being able to do that at a superhuman scale.
Great. We're at time. If we want to go to the next slide. we will send this presentation over to all the participants, and I'll let you guys wrap it up, and then we can go.
Thanks so much, everyone. Hopefully everybody walked away learning something here and having a better understanding of how to properly measure a channel that historically has just been really hard to understand. And a huge thanks to BlueAlpha, who've built incredible technology to help us all more effectively communicate our message through trusted voices, and to Klover for being such a great partner and really leaning in with it, both of us. So excited to shape the future of marketing and advertising with everybody on this call. And we have such an amazing opportunity to help drive more dollars and more spend to the most creative people in the world. That, of course, will only happen if we have the proper infrastructure and the proper way to measure it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.